All right. So, Genesis Phase 4, this should be at the 2 hour and 4 minute mark. And it was Ben Perry, the principal graphics programmer, that did this part. So, they talked about light. So, this is something that I know a lot of people aren't particularly interested in, but us ninjas, we need to understand light because we try to avoid it at all costs. Anyway, so basically they're adding global illumination. So that means, you have like a single environmental probe light, right? One regular light, right? And they're changing that to mini probe grid, which is like 40,000 lights, right? So not only is it's more than one light, but it's also ray traced. So a lot of people were wondering whether we'd actually get ray tracing. Well, we got it. So 40,000 ray traced lights versus one regular light, right? Think of this as like one light bulb, like one fluorescent light bulb, like the ones you sell in your grandma's basement or something, like the one that's just hanging from the ceiling. Then think like 40,000 LED lights, right? Now, think of how well lit the basement is with the 40,000 LED lights versus the one fluorescent bulb, right? No monsters hiding in the corner over there, right? I can see them all, right? But it's not just, how bright it is or whatever, right? It's just that it's like one light with the power of 40,000 ray trace lights, right? So that's kind of the data that this one thing is collecting, right? So, if you can see my setup, I have like two big lights here that are shining on me, so you could see all of me. There's not a whole lot of shadows and stuff like that. But the idea is that you can see me better because there's better lighting. But if I just had one light, or maybe one light over here, if you watch my early content, the lighting was pretty bad. But yeah, it creates a different feel, a different vibe. And with better lighting in a video game, it matters even more because sometimes we are supposed to see something, but we don't see it because the lighting just wasn't good enough. So, there's your global illumination thing. I can't really go into tech details because I'm not a lighting guy. I'm not a graphics programmer. But transparency, global illumination. So this is what allows you to see through darkness. It allows illumination to bounce off of objects, and it allows reflections, right? So remember when they put the Pico doll right in the middle, and then you could kind of see how they cleaned it up. They slowly cleaned up the image to where it looked really incredible. But if you go back and you look at just the before, and then you skip all the cleaning up part and look at the after, oh my goodness, it was incredible. And if you can't tell the difference, that's cool. Then you'll just be one of the people that walks past it. But I thought it was really awesome. I thought a lot of this presentation was awesome, but I also know this is kind of the stuff that people skip through. So I don't want to, spend too much time on it because I know a lot of people don't really care about the reflections and stuff like that. But at the same time, I do want to acknowledge that I thought it was awesome. And the same thing with the sound. So Graham Phillipson is the one who did the sound. And they based that, and so I don't think they had a name for the global illumination. It might have been Starlight, but they might have some issues with the boys if they try to get that one put under the trademark banner or whatever, copyright or whatever. So Star Audio is the name of the sound though. So they have a lot of different things that go into this, right? So there's the scale of the sound, the quality of the sound, and they want it to be like a seamless experience, right? So they don't want you to hear the sound switch, right? And so they talked about the Doppler effect and the sound and how it's relative to the location. And if you don't understand what that is, it's like if I get really close to the mic and then if I come back from the mic, the way that the sound travels as I slowly get closer and the way the sound travels as I slowly get further back. That's kind of the idea there is they want the sound to be realistic. They want it to be relative to location. They want it to scale based on certain sounds and things like that. And then they want the speed of sound to matter as well, right? Like it shouldn't just be, well, it's the same sound if I yell like a long yell, and then if I do a short, you know, gaspy yell, it shouldn't be the same sound. It should be like, oh, depending on how fast you did that or how fast you did this, the sound should change, right? And it should change in a realistic way. So this matters for things like flyby sounds, which they did in the video. The sniper rifle, you know, they took out the Pico, double took out the Pico, like triple time. Actually, I think they shot it like 3 or 4 times. So they really had an issue. That Graham really had an issue with Pico in that one. But it's a clippable moment, you know. That's kind of the stuff that they do in CitizenCon. FPS weapons and sniper rifle, that stuff is really cool. Like, if you really pay attention to like that type of stuff, it can give you a kind of a sense of where the sniper is coming from, right? Like, if you know, okay, the bullet hit here, right? But when I heard the sound, it was coming more from my right speaker than my left. So that means if the bullet hit here, they weren't in this area, they were probably closer to this area, right? So, you know, it just depends. You know, like, are you paying attention to that stuff? I don't know how well it'll help you, but you know, it's a cool thing to have added to the toolbox of like, well, if I pay attention to the sound well enough, I'll know what's going on. And then ship weapons, right? Making those sound more realistic to, and not just making them sound more realistic, but making them sound different depending on the environment, right? So the way they sound inside your ship, right, is different than the way they should sound outside your ship. Then, if you're in space, maybe you don't hear certain things inside your ship that you normally would, or maybe you hear more of it. And then, if you're in atmosphere, they should sound different. So, all things like that, right? And then there was my favorite part, right? The explosions. So there was the explosion light, right? So you see the A2 drop the bomb, and then you see the boom, right? You see it, right? And then you get the shock wave, which is like cool. That's just a visual effect that just is cool in general. You get the shockwave, and then you hear the explosion sound. That is really cool, because that's the type of stuff where you really feel like something just really big just happened. Like, an A2 dropping a bomb should not be a small, slight experience. It should be a huge deal, and I think they just showed that it will be. With sound, right, and light, obviously, but I think you could see why they do light and sound together, because you do light and sound together so that you can show like how an explosion can really affect the gameplay and everything like that. Imagine, you know, 12 of those bombs dropping around the same time, and like how you'd be rocked all over the place, you know, as a character. So yes, very cool stuff. So that's it for Genesis Phase 4. Genesis Phase 4 was mostly just the light and audio stuff. So now we'll move on to Genesis Phase 5.